Trump came out swinging, threatening huge tariffs on Canadian fertilizer. He threw $12 billion at U.S. farmers hurt by his own trade war, while Mark Carney flipped the script, selling more potash to Brazil, China, and India. The truth is, American farms need Canadian potash. Around 90% of U.S. potash is imported, and 80% of that comes straight from Canada. Saskatchewan alone sits on massive reserves, 5 times bigger than what the U.S. has. American farms burn through 5.3 million tons a year, while Canada produces a whopping 22.9 million. So when Trump threatened tariffs on the one thing U.S. agriculture can't replace, he ended up driving food costs even higher. Carney didn't back down or beg. He diversified. Now Brazil grabs 14% of Canadian potash, China 8%, and India's buying more every year. Saskatchewan producers ship to Asia instead of waiting for Trump's next move. And guess what? Canada still pulls in $11.5 billion a year while U.S. farmers pay the price. Canada flipped Trump's threats into long-term wins. When Trump rolled out his $12 billion bridge assistance bailout for U.S. farmers, it was already too late. His trade war with China crushed soybean exports, fertilizer prices shot up 11%, and crop prices tanked. The American Soybean Association warned of a third straight year of losses, about $150 lost per acre, totaling $15 billion nationwide. Even after the $12 billion payout, the math still failed. Farmers were bleeding money while the bailout barely covered the damage. At the same White House event where Trump announced the bailout, he doubled down, threatening very severe tariffs on Canadian fertilizer. He bragged that America would just make its own fertilizer, as if that solved everything. But reality hit hard. His administration launched DOJ probes accusing Canadian companies like Nutrien, the world's biggest potash producer, of price fixing. Tariffs and investigations dropped at once, a full-blown intimidation move. Yet prices were global, not rigged. Panic spread fast among U.S. farmers. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley begged Trump to spare potash. Grassley reminded him that American farms depend on Canadian supply, with zero backup plan. Russia only covers about 8 to 10% of America's potash needs, and Belarus is locked under sanctions. U.S. production barely hits 400,000 tons a year, far short of the 5.3 million needed. Grassley saw the truth, even if Trump didn't. America simply doesn't have enough fertilizer reserves. Canada does, 1.1 billion tons compared to America's 220 million. You can't fix that with tariffs or speeches. It's geological reality. Saskatchewan holds the gold mine, while small U.S. deposits in Montana and North Dakota can't compete. As fertilizer expert Josh Linville put it, if we start to upset Canada, where else do we go? The answer's grim. Russia's tiny share isn't stable, and Canada remains America's only real lifeline. Bill Knudsen from Michigan State warned that any tariff instantly drives fertilizer prices up and farm profits down. Nearly every crop depends on potash, so higher prices hit everyone hard. Farmers were already losing money. Tariffs would just dig the hole deeper, forcing more bailouts and taxpayer spending. Fertilizer eats up 30–45% of a farmer's yearly costs, and you can't just skip it. No potassium, no crops. Farmers can't raise prices either since corn, wheat, and soybeans trade globally at fixed rates. That means higher costs with zero extra income. Trump's tariff threats guaranteed chaos. Prices spiked and profits crashed. Even Republican farm state lawmakers, led by Grassley, pushed back hard. They warned Trump of political fallout. He finally backed off, cutting fertilizer tariffs to 10%. Still painful, but not the disaster a 25% hit would have been. Farmers made it clear. Canadian potash isn't optional, it's essential. But uncertainty lingered. 1 week tariffs were off, the next week they were back on. That constant flip-flopping wrecked confidence. Farmers couldn't plan, budget, or invest. Even after Trump briefly ended most fertilizer tariffs, he reversed again just 3 weeks later. No one bets billions on building new plants when policy changes overnight. While Trump stirred chaos, Mark Carney stayed calm. He didn't beg or bargain. Instead, he expanded Canada's exports, setting a bold goal, doubling non-U.S. trade from $300 to $600 billion within a decade. Potash became the perfect target for Canada's diversification push. Global demand is booming, especially in Asia and Latin America, while the U.S. market stays flat, using around 7.5 to 9.5 million tons a year with no real growth. Why stick with a stagnant market that keeps threatening tariffs when fast-growing ones are begging for supply? Brazil's a prime example. It feeds the world with soybeans, corn, beef, and coffee, but imports 85% of its fertilizer and all its potash. It now takes 14% of Canada's potash exports, up from almost nothing 10 years ago. Brazil's trying to cut imports someday, but that'll take decades, so Canada's their go-to partner right now. India's the same story. Huge farming nation feeding 1.4 billion people, using over 30 million tons of nutrients yearly, yet importing 100% of its potash. No deposits, no choice. Canada's supply keeps their crops alive. Canada's potash exports to India keep climbing. Steady supply, high quality, long-term deals. India values reliability over cheap prices and still remembers the fertilizer chaos during the Ukraine war. With food inflation a political nightmare, India's government gladly pays more for guaranteed Canadian deliveries. China's in a similar spot, world's biggest potash user, but even with local production, it still imports huge volumes. About 8% of Canada's potash now heads to China, feeding its wheat, cotton, and vegetable crops that sustain 1.4 billion people. And it doesn't stop there. Indonesia, South Korea, Malaysia, and Japan are all upping imports too. Saskatchewan hit record highs in 2024, 22.9 million tons of potash. The U.S. only imports about 9 million tons yearly. So even if America slammed tariffs on everything tomorrow, Canada could instantly reroute 14 million tons to eager buyers in Brazil, China, India, and across Asia. Global demand's already at 76 million tons and climbing toward 80 million by decade's end, while the U.S. share keeps shrinking fast. Nutrien's building a $1 billion export terminal in Longview, Washington, moving 5 to 6 million tons yearly straight to Asia. It's genius. Canadian potash shipped through an American port, but sold to China and India, beyond U.S. tariff reach. Meanwhile, BHP's $23 billion Jansen project launches in 2027, expanding to 8.5 million tons by 2030, all bound for Asia. Canada's potash boom is leaving America behind. Investors now treat the U.S. market as unstable. Trump's tariff threats scared off billions. He pushed for domestic fertilizer production, but even with huge government support, it barely moves the needle. The Michigan Potash and Salt Company got a $1.26 billion loan guarantee, but that's only 15% of demand. Utah's Sage Potash produces 300,000 tons. Combined, they still leave a 4.2 million ton gap. Even with subsidies and fast-tracked permits, U.S. output can't compete with Canada's vast reserves. Extraction costs too high, deposits too small, timelines too long. Canada's potash industry pulls in $11.5 billion a year, nearly a third of the world's supply, and America still depends on it. Canada now controls 41% of global potash exports, a true strategic resource. Yet the U.S. keeps threatening tariffs on something it can't replace. Domestic production's tiny, reserves are 5 times smaller than Canada's, and sanctions on Russia and Belarus make imports even tighter. American farms survive on $40 billion in subsidies, but with crop prices down and aid shrinking, incomes are set to drop $30 billion by 2026. Trump's trade chaos created farmers hooked on handouts while wrecking the export markets that once kept them afloat. Meanwhile, Canada's sitting strong, 1.1 billion tons in reserves, advanced mining infrastructure, efficient shipping, and loyal buyers. Instead of caving to Trump's pressure, Mark Carney turned threats into opportunity. Brazil pays fast, India signs long-term, and China pays premiums for security. As Asia and Latin America boom, Canada's diversification plan is thriving while America's farm economy struggles to stand on its own. Trump can't escape the facts. America needs Canadian fertilizer. You can't manufacture reserves or build potash mines overnight. It's pure geological reality. U.S. farmers depend on potassium, and only Canadian potash delivers it. No substitutes, no shortcuts. Mark Carney saw that weakness and turned it into strength, diversifying exports, cutting U.S. dependency, and redirecting $11.5 billion in potash sales to fast-growing markets like Brazil, China, India, and across Asia. Trump's tariff threats only sped up what was already coming. While the U.S. market stays stagnant, Canada's locking in new deals with nations that pay on time and respect contracts. This is how Canada transforms American hostility into opportunity, and how geological power turns into lasting leverage. Subscribe to Canada Today 13.